Welcome to Monday's Markers with Charlie. This is a series sponsored by the Battle of Homestead Foundation covering the markers that were done in the booklet Labor History Sites by myself and Howard Scott from the United Steelworkers and printed by the United Steelworkers. We will be covering, there are 40 some markers in there, and there are actually others that we want to add. So we will be doing this program for most of the year. I think it's very important that our very first marker was Crystal Eastman commemorating the centennial of women's suffrage, a great hero of Pittsburgh labor, worker safety and health. And today we're going to talk about Martin Delany, certainly one of the greatest of all people who came through Pittsburgh, most extraordinary accomplishments. And Martin Delany was a fierce abolitionist. He was an opponent of slavery, and at this particular moment in history, when millions of people around the world are in the streets to assert that Black Lives Matter and to demand that symbols of the Confederacy be removed and names of military bases be taken away from traitors, it is important to remember the man that was Martin Delany and the importance that he holds in American and in Pittsburgh history. Delany, as a young man of 19, walked to Pittsburgh from Chambersburg. His mother was a free black, so he was born free. His father was a slave whose mother saved money and bought his father's freedom. His mother, though, had to flee Virginia because she was found out teaching her children how to read, which was a crime in Virginia. So she came to Chambersburg in Pennsylvania. And at 19, Martin Delany walked to Pittsburgh to strike out on his own and begin an amazing life. He joined a group of people in Pittsburgh, Jean Vachon, a veteran of the War of 1812 and a very powerful figure at the beginning of Black history in Pittsburgh, and Reverend Lewis Woodson. They led a very vibrant and organized Pittsburgh Black community in opposition to the revision of the Pennsylvania Constitution of 1838, which took away the right to vote to black males, which had been in practice since the abolition of slavery under the Quakers at the end of the 18th century. Delany became a writer. He founded a newspaper, The Mystery, in Pittsburgh in 1843, and the masthead on the Mystery carried the words, "Hereditary bondsmen, know ye not who would be free must strike the first blow." He worked as a barber and studied medicine under the most important doctors in Pittsburgh saw his great potential. He was among the first blacks admitted to Harvard Medical School, but he was dismissed after a semester because of the opposition of black students to the three black men that were admitted to Harvard Medical School that year. In response, he wrote a manifesto, which is considered the founding document of black nationalism, that argued that blacks had no future in the United States. Delany, however, had a very complex life and a complex relationship with the United States. In 1850, when the Fugitive Slave Act was passed, probably the darkest moment for free blacks in the North, Delany addressed a large protest meeting in Allegheny City, which today the North Side, where he gave a powerful speech that included, "My home is my castle. In that castle are none but my wife and children, as free as the angels of heaven, and whose liberty is as sacred as the pillars of God. If any man approaches that house in search of a slave, if he crosses the threshold of my door, and I do not lay him down a lifeless corpse at my feet, I hope the grave may refuse my body a resting place, and righteous heaven my spirit a home. Oh no, he cannot enter into my house, and we both live." Delany, in response, moved his large family to who had the children who had names like Ethiopia and Africa, to Ontario, Canada, where he met with Frederick Douglass and John Brown and heard of Brown's plan to seize arms and to try to free the slaves through the mountains of Appalachia. He had been, after the demise of his newspaper, The Mystery, had been a partner with Frederick Douglass. Douglass famously said of Delany that I wake up every day thanking God that I am a man. Delany wakes up every day and thanks God that he's a black man. He wrote a novel, one of the earliest novels written by an African American, called Blake, or The Huts of America, where he envisioned a slave rebellion in Cuba and the foundation of a free labor sugar and plantation system that would drive the South under economically. He, in 1859, he had both opposed early on colonization, but because of the Fugitive Slave Law, he decided to go to Africa and see whether it was possible to found a colony of free black Americans who would go there and work with Africans to produce crops that would undermine the South. He went to Liberia. He wasn't impressed. He ended up in Nigeria, walking 1,000 miles, and made a treaty with the chieftain in the town of Abeokuta in western Nigeria. On his return to the United States in 1860, he stopped in London and was invited by the prestigious scientific organization to present his findings on the Niger Delta, a question of much concern in Europe because whites had been unable to penetrate into up the Niger and to figure out exactly the course of the Niger had been a mystery for much of the 18th century. When Delany was introduced to this scientific gathering, the white American delegation shamefully stood up and protested and demanded that Martin Delany present his credentials. Delany's answer to that demand echoed through the years when black sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, carried Delany's defiant answer, "I am a man." With the outbreak of the Civil War, Delany became an energetic advocate for black soldiers and black officers to be recruited in the fight against slavery. In February of 1865, he met with Abraham Lincoln personally, and Lincoln was so impressed with his eloquence and conviction that he called in the Secretary of War and told him to name Delany a line officer, a major, the highest ranking black officer in the Union Army. Delany then followed Sherman's march and to assist in the caring for the thousands, the tens of thousands of blacks who followed Sherman in the hope and desire to be free. And at the end of the war in Charleston, he was part of the delegation that raised the American flag back over Fort Sumter. And he brought with him to that ceremony Robert Vesey, the son of Denmark Vesey, who had led one of the major slave revolts in American history. Delany went on to become a leader of the Freedmen's Bureau on Hilton Head. So as blacks and whites continue the struggle to complete the mission of the American Civil War, the mission of the American Civil Rights Movement in guaranteeing the vote, respect, dignity, and decent wage, housing, and living standards for all Americans, no matter what race, the towering figure of Martin Delany, for 20 years a Pittsburgher, needs to be honored and remembered. So I urge folks to learn more about Martin Delany. Go to Wally Jamal, History's Flip Side. Wally, the great Pittsburgh actor, is the expert on Martin Delany, and learn more there about the great Martin Delany's life and struggle and example for all of us today.